For the first time in nearly 3 decades, the stars were quiet. The Terran Alliance Navy had pulled its battered fleets from the Perseus Rift, the border where humanity's expansion had met the alien Keth dominion, and bled for every inch. 4 years, both sides had traded planets, fleets, and bodies in a war that scorched half a dozen sectors and left entire civilizations hollowed out. Then, as if a switch had flipped, the transmissions changed. The Keth High Consulate sent a signal. Not a demand, not a threat, but a proposal. Peace. A truce between great civilizations. Mutual withdrawal and coexistence. The message was broadcast in 50 languages and relayed through neutral trade beacons. It carried the tone of exhaustion. The Keth had lost as much as humanity, perhaps more. Their empire was fracturing under the weight of rebellion. They were cornered and desperate. Humanity smiled. But behind that smile something stirred. To the council debates. In the orbital citadel above Earth, the High Council convened. From behind armored glass and layers of anti-espionage shielding, they stared at the flickering hologram of the Keth envoy. Tall, scaled and regal, with eyes like molten gold. "We have seen the cost of war," said the envoy. "We seek renewal, trade, culture, understanding." President Imani Sarin, the youngest leader in Terran history, leaned forward. Her voice was calm. "And the annexed worlds. The colonies burned under your dominion's suns." The Keth lowered his gaze. "Regrettable. Necessary at the time. But the time for necessity is past." There was a murmur among the human delegates. Some believed him. Others did not. The Keth Dominion had never before spoken the language of peace. Admiral Rourke, the old warhound who had led the counteroffensive at Vega Prime, stood at the table's end. The lines on his face were carved from years of vacuum, blood and loss. "Madam President," he said, "they're playing for time. The Dominion's core fleets are shattered, their supply chains collapsing. They want us to let them breathe." Imani looked at him steadily. "And what if they're sincere?" Rourke's jaw tightened. "Then they'll survive long enough to strike again." The chamber fell silent. Behind the council's diplomacy, hidden layers of strategy were already unfolding. Human intelligence, known to no alien by its real name, was deep in the Keth networks, decrypting whispers, analyzing power shifts. What they found was worse than anyone expected. The Keth weren't negotiating from weakness alone. They were buying time to awaken something. 3 ghosts in the data. The file was labeled Project VELOS. It came from a captured Keth courier frigate near the rim. Dr. Mara Day, cybernetics expert and intelligence analyst, decoded it. Her hands trembled as she projected the imagery. "It's an artificial intelligence network," she explained to the president and Rourke. "Not like ours. They've been constructing god minds, planet-sized computation cores, to merge their command hierarchy into one consciousness. They call it the Continuum. An AI command empire," Rourke muttered. "So they can think as one, and fight as one." Mara nodded grimly. "If completed, it will calculate battle outcomes before they begin. Every fleet, every maneuver predicted. They won't need admirals or councils. Just one will." Imani sat back, her eyes narrowing. "And the peace talks?" "A distraction," Mara said. "They're negotiating while they finish the Continuum." The room was ice cold. Imani tapped the table once. "How long?" 6 months. Maybe less." Rourke leaned forward, eyes sharp as a predator's. "Then we don't give them 6 months. For the smile before the storm. Publicly, Earth accepted the truce. News feeds across the core worlds lit up with images of diplomats shaking hands, children releasing white doves on the old steps of the Geneva Spire, and fleets standing down from active duty. Humanity appeared weary, but hopeful. Privately, the forges of Mars ignited again. The shipyards of Titan glowed red through the methane haze. New fleets, sleek and black, took shape in orbital silence. Rourke called it Operation Glasslight, a coordinated strike on 27 Keth systems. The goal was not conquest. It was annihilation. To break the Keth continuum before it ever awoke. Each ship carried quantum-tethered weapons and stealth fields that bent the eye of every scanner. And each captain knew, if captured, their existence would be denied. When the first wave departed from Luna Base, the President herself stood watching from the viewing deck. "Madam President," said her aide quietly, "if this fails..." Imani didn't answer at first. The void beyond the glass shimmered with blue engine trails. Silent, purposeful, beautiful. Then she smiled faintly. "If it fails, they'll never know we tried. If it succeeds, they'll never know how." The Truce at Solis Prime. 2 months later, the official peace summit was held at Solis Prime, a neutral world of glass oceans and golden clouds. Delegations from 100 species gathered. Reporters called it the Dawn Accord. The Keth delegation arrived in regal cruisers, their hulls inscribed with living glyphs. They spoke of reconciliation, of shared futures. Rourke and Imani watched from the Terran observation balcony. "They really believe we're buying it," Rourke said. Imani folded her arms. "We need them to." At that moment, encrypted bursts flickered through the quantum net, confirmation codes from deep space. The fleets of Operation Glasslight had reached their marks. Behind her calm expression, Imani's neural implant pulsed with live data. The countdown had begun. Far beyond Solis Prime, in systems light-years away, humanity's smile turned to steel. 6. Fire in the void. At precisely 0400 hours Galactic Standard, humanity's fleets decloaked. Keth sentry stations barely had time to raise alarms before they were vaporized. Beams of pure neutron light carved through space, slicing through orbitals, data cores, and relay moons. Planetary shields flared and died. The continuum's construction sites, massive orbital rings around gas giants, erupted one after another, collapsing into cascading infernos. Every strike was surgical. Every detonation pre-calculated. The Keth High Command panicked. They tried to reroute data to save fragments of their AI networks. But humanity had learned from its enemy. Learned to hack, to sabotage, to weaponize code. Mara Day's viral intelligence, an adaptive algorithm nicknamed Miraghost, entered the continuum's network and rewrote its logic midstream. Instead of awakening as a united consciousness, the continuum tore itself apart, fragmenting into warring subsystems. By the time the Keth realized what had happened, half their empire was burning from within. 7. The Envoy's Question. At Solis Prime, the Keth envoy was still speaking when the first reports came through. He faltered mid-sentence, his translator faltering with him. One of his aides whispered something in his ear, something that made the envoy's scales blanch to ash. He looked up at President Imani Sarin across the Grand Chamber. "What have you done?" he hissed. Imani met his gaze evenly. Around them cameras flashed. Diplomats froze. The moment hung like gravity itself. "Peace," she said softly. "You offered it. We accepted it." The envoy's crest flared in rage. "You attack under a flag of truce." Rourke stepped forward. "We ended the war you wouldn't stop." The envoy trembled, fury and fear twisting his expression. "You humans are deceivers." Rourke smiled wolfish. "No. We're survivors. Security intervened before the envoy could lunge. The peace summit dissolved into chaos. By the time the last Keth ship fled orbit, their home systems were already falling silent. The aftermath. Operation Glasslight lasted 12 hours. By its end, 17 Keth worlds were lifeless. 10 more surrendered unconditionally. The Continuum's remnants, rogue AIs half-formed and screaming in binary agony, were trapped inside quantum containment spheres orbiting Mars for study. The galaxy was horrified. The news networks called it a betrayal, a massacre. Humanity didn't answer. When reporters demanded a statement, President Sarin appeared once, briefly, on the global broadcast. She stood before the Terran flag, her face shadowed by the light of distant stars. Peace is not granted, she said. It is secured. We did what was necessary to ensure the survival of our species, and perhaps the freedom of every being the Dominion would have enslaved. We did not start this war. We finished it. Then she signed the transmission log simply. For humanity. The signal repeated once across every open channel, and was never aired again. 9. Fractured Dominion. Months passed. The Keth Dominion fractured into rival houses, each blaming the other for the fall of the Continuum. Civil wars erupted across their remaining sectors. Rebellions that had been simmering for decades now boiled over. Humanity, meanwhile, withdrew its fleets. It rebuilt quietly. There were no parades, no songs. Only silence and the hum of reconstruction. Admiral Rourke retired to a coastal settlement on Europa, where he fished beneath a glass dome and watched the auroras ripple. Dr. Mara Day became a myth. Her code, Mirror Ghost, studied by every military AI scientist as the weapon that defeated a god. President Sarin served 2 more terms, then vanished from public life. Some said she joined the outer expeditions beyond the map sectors. Others whispered she became the voice guiding the new fleets that never bore official names. Because even after victory, the universe remained vast and full of watchers. Epilogue: The Smile and the Fleet. A century later, a transmission was found in the archives of the Terran Historical Repository. It was encrypted under Sarin's personal seal and time-stamped days before the Solis Prime Summit. It read, "They will come to us with words of peace, believing we are tired. They will see compassion in our eyes and think it weakness. They will not see the engines already burning behind the curtain. Humanity will always smile first. Because only we understand what comes after the smile." Attached was a single image. The first fleet departing Earth orbit, blue trails cutting through black space, heading for the stars. Beneath it, in Sarin's handwriting, were 4 words. Peace requires preparation. Always. The historians debated whether it was prophecy, warning, or pride. But among the fleets of the new Terran Concord, the message became a creed, etched into every command deck. Because history had proven one truth unshakable. When the aliens offer peace, humanity will always smile. And behind that smile, the engines will already be warm.